Hey, mechanical engineers. At the end of 2025, ASHRAE released their latest version of standard 62.1. 62.1, 2025. There are a few little changes in there, but there's one big one that you should be aware of. I went through the new standard 2025, comparing it to 2022, and there's nothing major until we get to section 6. And section 6 is where it goes through the different ventilation procedures. So with ventilation rate procedure, we're going to see one big change. The first thing I'll note is that the calculation for VBZ, the breathing zone outdoor airflow, has not changed. So it's still outlining this people rate plus area rate method for calculating VBZ. Following that is where you get table 6.1, which lists out the different people rates, area rates, and occupant densities for different space types. I recommend you go through the new 2025 table 6.1 and update any templates or standards that you have internally to reflect the new ones. There weren't too many changes, but they did tighten up some of the occupant densities for some of these spaces. For instance, this multi-use assembly space, previously 100, now they tightened it up to 67 as the default occupant density. And there's a handful of other changes like that. Now, if you're using HVACR, those new templates are already in the program. So when you go to import space types, you'll find 2022, and you'll also find the 2025 space types here as well, with those adjustments already made. So that's taken care of for you in HVACR. Now let's get to the biggest change that has been introduced in the new standard, and that has to do with equation 6.2. Equation 6.2 is how you calculate the zone outdoor airflow. It's how you get VOZ from your VBZ and your EZ, your air distribution effectiveness. In 2022, the equation was simple. It's your VBZ divided by EZ, your air distribution effectiveness. Now, in 2025, they introduced this E-rho. This is an air density correction factor. What is E-rho? What is air density correction? Well, right above it, they have a table here showing what the correction factor is based on the elevation of your project above sea level. So now, based on the elevation of your project, you have to further correct VBZ to account for lower density air the higher up you go, so that you're ensuring you actually get the right amount of air to the zone. Under 515 feet, the correction factor is 1.0, so projects under that, you're not going to see any change to your VOZ, but 515 and above, you start to see these correction factors. And the higher you get, when you get to the 5,000 feet category, you're looking at a 25% increase in your VOZ based on this correction factor. So you need to pay attention to that. You're doing projects in Flagstaff, Arizona, or Denver, and other high altitude areas, you're going to see a pretty decent increase in your VOZ. When you get to the 11,275 feet or above category, there's a whole list of equations in Appendix D that are used to then calculate your E-rho. So pay attention to that if you're designing projects in the mountains of Peru. Now, again, for HVACR users, this update has already been made. And if you go to your project settings, you'll now see an option to calculate your ventilation, your VOZ, based on the new 2025 standard. For existing projects, the default is 2022. We're not going and changing numbers for you. But for new projects, you can select whether you want to use this outdoor air correction factor by turning on 2025 or revert back to 2022, where that air density correction factor is not in use. So this makes it easy for you, and HVACR automatically picks up the elevation of your project based on your address and will apply the correct correction factor. So there's the big change that comes to 2025. If you're an HVACR user, we got you covered. That update's already made for you. If not, make sure you're paying attention to that as code starts to catch up with this new standard and utilize that air density correction factor in projects above 500 feet in elevation.